This is the daily writing exercise, recorded, day 30, titled Palla Jungle. The old way was, and shall always be, the best way, Harold Smith said. You see, the game will never really change. It will always come down to people. People and the many ways they try to influence you. Hannah stood beside him with an umbrella in hand and a stiff expression on her face. She listened thoughtfully to the words that slowly streamed out of Harold's mouth. And the best way to know people, Harold continued, is to let them speak. People will tell you all sorts of things if only you are patient enough to listen. Hannah nodded. Keep your answers short, Harold advised, and ask pointed questions. Like what? Hannah asked. Oh, you know, Harold said. Ask direct, open questions. Ask questions that require them to think of the thing you want them to think about. Don't ask someone what they want out of life. Ask them instead if they want to work out. From there on in, you can steer the conversation in a way that makes them talk about it first. Always remember that people want to seem interesting, that they want to keep the conversation going, that they want to appear open and non-caring, and will feel the need to keep pushing and revealing more than they normally would. Right, Hannah said. Do you do that too? We all do it, Harold answered. Worst part is that we often can't help ourselves. Even the best of manipulators can find themselves saying things that they did not really want to say. They only get away with it a lot of the times is because they are great at adapting, which is something you can learn. It's just about doing it over and over and over again until it becomes part of you. Won't people be mad when they catch the lie? Hannah asked. Harold chuckled. Not really. Most of the time they tend to be proud of themselves for catching the lie in the first place, and then they tend to overstep themselves due to the excitement of having caught it. They'll confront you in a way that makes it easy for you to turn it back onto them, and make them feel sorry for the way they approached it. Or better yet, you just admit that you lied and turned a big thing into a very small non-thing. Have you lied a lot? Hannah asked. Harold shrugged. I suppose we all lie, don't we? Yeah, Hannah said, but some more than others. Harold laughed. You're right. People hate someone who tells the truth more than someone who lies, even after they found out that said person lied. I don't know what it is, or why, but it is one of those things. So remember that. Hannah nodded. She placed her hands in her jacket's pockets and grabbed hold onto something. Yeah, she said. It's unfortunate, Harold sighed, but what are we to do about it? Well, Hannah said as she pulled out the item from her pocket. There was always one way to deal with liars. Harold noticed her take something out of her pocket. His eyes drifted towards it. His face turned white as a sheet as he realized what it was. He then took a step back and instinctively raised his hands. You see, Hannah continued, when you're one of those raping bastards that goes through life raping women right and left and center, you really ought to make sure you wear a rubber. Harold began to stutter. I can't explain. It's not what you think. Things are a lot more complicated. Yeah, Hannah sighed. I can only imagine. And I can imagine you saying the exact same thing to my mother all those years ago. Very complicated indeed. Wait, who? Harold continued to say. That is not what... Hannah ignored him. It was actually very complicated, you know, she said, her lips slightly trembling. Living with a mother who was shunned by everyone and everything as a whore. With someone who hated your guts for ruining her life. Who put the blame for everything that happened on an unknown father who was supposed to be there. Who promised to be there. Who I wished would step in between her and the bottles of alcohol she threw at my head. And all the blame she gave me for well, simply existing. Yeah, very complicated indeed. I mean, it is pretty difficult to explain to your friends why they can't come to your house because their mom might attack them. Or fuck them, or, well, I don't know. Yeah. Very complicated indeed. Harold regained some of his composure and straightened his coat. How, he said thoughtfully, Do you know I am your father? Hannah stopped her rant and looked Harold directly into his eyes and sighed. Well, Dad, she said, because I've done multiple DNA tests just to make sure it was you, which frankly was a pretty easy thing to do being your assistant. And I can't tell you how happy I was when I found out that you were my father. And how fucking sad I was when I realized just how much of a raping asshole you really were. And that you likely raped my mother as well, which explains so much of her toxic and frail and just awful, awful behavior. It explains so much of the person she became. And all that because of you. All because of some little lie. Well, yeah. A loud bang scattered across the street. Hannah lowered her arms afterwards and sighed deeply. She then looked up at the sky with tears in her eyes, before she did what she really came to do. Bang. No more was written or recorded. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.